One of the big problems that was really holding me back as well was that twisted sense of time. This cannot go on. Maybe in a few decades from now, I look back on my life and maybe I'll have some regrets, but how can I just leave this behind and go on to something else? Why do I have to squeeze everything into the next few years of my life and put so much pressure on myself? In this episode today, I want to talk about a rather difficult topic or problem, let's say, which is thinking or feeling that it's too late to change your career or make any kind of other big change in your life. And that's something that I went through myself, and I'm going to talk about my own experience a bit later, and something that you might be facing as well. In my own family and in my own circle of acquaintances, I know a lot of people who are thinking this way, and this really keeps them from being able to live their best life and have a fulfilling career. Some people are in their 30s, some in their 50s or 60s, and what they all have in common is that they have this dream to perhaps leave their job, change their career, maybe go into freelancing, change industries, basically do something very different from what they were doing all this time. But their problem is that one, they lack the courage, they are fearful, and I'm not going to talk too much about the fear aspect in this video, but that is something that you can check out in one of my earlier episodes. I'm going to link it up here in case you're watching this on YouTube. So fear is one problem, but the other problem I see is a twisted sense of time. And there are two ways to solve this problem, but first, let's talk about how that twisted sense of time actually looks like. When we do things like binging Netflix, just watching TV, scrolling through social media or whatever, it seems as though we have endless time. Did that even ever occur to you when you were scrolling through your social media and then you look at the clock and suddenly you realized, what, I've been on social media for like an hour or two and I didn't get anything done, and 3 hours of your life are gone. And somehow in that way we do have time. Somehow we always manage to find time for that. But how come that when we're talking about other things in our life that we ourselves say is super important, for example, looking into how to change careers, doing the research and the work that it takes to actually launch that career change process, suddenly we tell ourselves, yeah, I really want to do that. I'm really serious about that, but I just don't have time at the moment. I have work to do. I have all these responsibilities. I have chores to do. I have to do laundry. I have to watch Netflix and so on. But I just can't spare 1 hour or even 15 minutes per day to look into those important things, the things that really matter to me in my life. So this is what I mean by a twisted sense of time. The way that we look at time, our perspective of time, and especially the way we treat time is really not objective. We don't treat every minute the same. So 1 hour of watching Netflix goes by in no time and is invested very easily, but we really duck and try to avoid investing 1 hour of time looking into that career change that we want to do. So I was thinking a lot about this because that's also what I experienced in my own life. So for those of you who don't know yet, I actually made this super big career change about 10 plus years ago. Oh my God. Maybe 10 plus years ago, I made this big change from working in the banking industry as a project manager to leaving my job and then launching a series of experiments, going into the freelance world, acting, filmmaking, and finally creating this content. But it also took me a while to get out of the banking world and really make up my mind to leave it. And one of the big problems that was really holding me back as well was that twisted sense of time. I always found time after work in the evenings to do things like watching TV or whatever. But I didn't really invest the time to look into my career change, to really think about, okay, even if I quit my job now, what is it actually that I want to do next? If I hand in my resignation tomorrow and then I leave my job in 2 weeks, what would I do then? what would I want to do as a career and for work, right? So that went on for a long time, for months or even a year perhaps, until I told myself, no, this cannot go on. If I really want to make a change, I need to invest time into it. I need to change the way I look at time. So that's when I started going to the public library every Saturday. Yeah, I think almost every Saturday I went there. I got a cup of coffee and a muffin and so on. I sat down for 2 to 3 hours and really forced myself to think of a plan to escape the rat race and change my career. And as you see, it worked out. It took a lot of time, but finally I arrived here. And yeah, this process took quite a long time. And when I started it, I was in my late 20s. And you might say that, okay, if you're still in your 20s, you actually have a lot of time, right? And that's what you would think. But looking at all the comments on my YouTube videos, I sense that even people who are very young, who are in their early 20s, late 20s, and you might be around that age as well, even those people, they think that it's too late for them. This is usually what they think. They think that, okay, I already spent this number of years studying my major, and I already invested, let's say, 5 years in this career in engineering or banking, real estate, or whatever. So how can I just leave this behind and go on to something else? I mean, it would take so much time, right, to change careers. I would need to maybe get a new education or some certification. I need to learn new skills. And then when I try to get a job in the new industry, I would need to start from the bottom again, and then it would take me ages to climb the corporate ladder in that industry. Or if I start freelancing or start my own business, then, as we all know, it would take years until I would start making some progress and actually earn a full-time living from that. So why bother, right? I mean, let's just stay here and let's just continue to live life this way. And yeah, maybe in a few decades from now, I look back on my life and maybe I'll have some regrets, but I just don't know what else to do, right? So that is something that not only people in their 50s or 60s think, but a lot of people in their 20s and 30s. They have this skewed sense of time. They think that they don't have enough years in their life left and that they've lived most of their life. And that is where I want to get to the first solution to solve this problem of this twisted sense of time. So there will be two solutions to this. One will be forward looking and the other one is backward looking. So let's start with a forward looking one. There's a concept that I want to introduce to you that will totally change your sense of time, which is called career life past and career life ahead. So let's get into what this actually means. And I will present you with an example. I will give you a very, very simple example using numbers. And what I want you to do, if you really want to change your sense of time and stop feeling like it's too late to change careers, I really want you to calculate along with me. So just grab your phone or a calculator, or grab a piece of paper and a pen and start writing along with me. So these are the numbers that you need to write down. So make a timeline, a straight timeline, and on one end you write the age at which you started to work. So let's say that you started working at the age of 20. And at the other end, write down when you plan to retire. And for this example, I will just use 60. I know that most people will retire at 65, 67, or many people will even be forced to work until 70. So just pick the number at which you think you might want to retire. Okay, so we've got these two numbers, the age at which you started working, which is 20, and then the age at which you want to retire, which is 60. So if you subtract 20 from 60, you've got 40 years. Those 40 years represent your career life. What I mean by career life is the number of years that you have in your entire life during which you can or want to pursue your career. So that's 40 years. So in the next step, look at your current age. What is your current age now? And for this example, we'll just say that you're 30 now. So just put a line there and write down 30. So what does this mean? Let's look at the entire picture here. How many years have you worked so far? If you started working at the age of 20 and now you are 30, it means that you have worked for just 10 years. I know it might seem like an eternity, but as you will find out in a second, it's not that much. So take that 10 years and divide it by your total career life. So that's 10 divided by 40 equals 25%, or a fourth. So that shows you that even though it feels like an enormous amount of time, so far you've only spent a fourth of your entire career life. And what that means is that you still have so much left. If you plan to work until you're 60 years old and now you're 30 years old, that means that you still have 30 years to work on your career. So if you take 30 and divide that by 40, you'll have 75%, or 3/4. So if you look at it, now you've only spent 25%, or maybe in your case even 20 or 15% of your entire career life, and you still have 75%, 80, or maybe even 85% left. And that kind of puts things in perspective. At least it did it for me. As soon as I did that calculation, I started to change my perspective. I no longer thought that I'm out of time and I have to get everything done in the next 5 to 10 years. I have to achieve all my goals and make all the career changes that I ever want to do. But I changed my perspective. I looked at the reality of time, that I still have so much left. So let's say that I achieve all of my goals, everything that I wanted to achieve in my life in the next 5 years. So what would I do after that? I mean, for me personally, life only has meaning if I have a purpose, an ongoing purpose, something that I want to achieve, something that is important to me that I want to work on. So why do I have to squeeze everything into the next few years of my life and put so much pressure on myself? If you have so many years of career life ahead, that's 75 to 80%, why not distribute all the things that you want to do in a lifetime over those 40 or 50 years? So that is one solution, and I really hope that it managed to somehow change your perspective of time and gave you a better sense of objectivity when you're looking at time. So now let's look at the second solution, so that you stop thinking that it's too late for everything and that you don't have enough time anymore to make any changes and so on. And that is a backward-looking solution. The reason why we think that it's not worth making any changes anymore is because we tend to believe that things take awfully long. I mean, things of course do take a long time. If you change careers, then there's time you need to get that new education or certificate and then look for a new job in the industry and so on. And that can take you anywhere from 3 to 5 years, sometimes even 7 years. So that's a lot of time. But if we think back to the career life ahead concept, it's not that much. So if you take, for example, 5 years, let's just say you need 5 years to fully change your career. If in that earlier example, your career life ahead was 30 years, in theory, you could fit 30 divided by 5, you could fit 6 careers into the rest of your life. I mean, of course, most likely you will not want to do that. Perhaps you just want to do 1 career change or 2 career change. But all I'm saying is that if you only want to do 1 or 2 career changes in your life, you still have plenty of time. Okay, but that's not what we're going to talk about. We're not going to talk about the career life ahead. But what we want to focus on now is how long it actually takes to change your career. And in many cases, people tend to overestimate it. They think, or maybe they don't even concretely think of a certain number. It's just so overwhelming thinking about the prospect of changing careers that no number even enters into your mind, and that way you don't have anything to work with. So I want to ask you to really try and concretize that number, how long you think it takes to change careers. So think of the industry, the career that you're in now, and think of the career, the industry that you want to get into. So how many years will that take? Will it take 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years? One way to know the exact number is to go online and research the bios of other people who have changed careers or started a certain career. But an easier way is actually to talk to someone. Talk to someone amongst your acquaintances, friends, or family members. Let's say, for example, that you want to become a professional photographer and you know someone in your family who is already a professional photographer. Ask them out for a coffee and ask them in detail how long it took them to get to different milestones. And you might find out to your surprise that, okay, because they did photography as a hobby for quite some time during their youth, it only took them about 1.5 years to become a professional photographer, meaning to set up a studio or to get clients and then earn a living from doing photography. So that is part A of the solution, finding out how long it actually takes concretely to change careers. But there's a big but here. You might say, it took him or her 2 years or 3 years to successfully change careers. But I can't do that. I mean, I'm not that capable. I don't think that I could pull it off. I mean, it would take me 10 years or so. And that is where we get to part B of the solution. So in order to really find out how long it takes you to do things, you have to look to your past. So let's just make a quick trip into your past and think about all the meaningful things that you've accomplished in the past. And please don't tell me that you've achieved nothing. I truly believe that everyone has achieved something in their life. I mean, it might seem small and minuscule, but it is something. It could be something as simple as building a tree house in your backyard, or completing a project at work, or perhaps writing a short novel or something. So think of the accomplishments, think of things that are meaningful to you that you've achieved in the past, and pick out at least 2 or 3 of those. Write them down. And the next step that you need to do is think of how many years it took you to accomplish that. So let's take, for example, one of the things that I accomplished that was very meaningful to me, and that was making 2 feature films without having any film background before that. I mean, I had some acting background, but I didn't have any background producing films. To make those 2 films end to end, it took me about 3 to 4 years. And that is a fact that I very often forget. I mean, it's actually ridiculous. I often tend to underestimate myself when I'm about to work on meaningful things that I think are very difficult. I tend to think that, okay, I'm not able to pull this off. I mean, even if I do this, it will take me a decade or 2, right? But then it really helps me to remind myself of my own accomplishments in the past. When I think back to the time that I made those 2 feature films in 3 years, I'm reminded that, yeah, I'm actually capable. I'm actually capable of starting new things, working on meaningful projects in a matter of like just 2 to 3 years. And that is what I call proof of accomplishments. And that is something that you have to figure out for yourself. You have to really dig into your past and make a list. Ideally as many as possible of all your accomplishments in the past, and write down next to it how long it took you. This is the best way to gain internal motivation. You can watch as many motivational videos as you can about people achieving great things, but it will not help you as much as having that internal motivation. Because if you look at other people's successes, you will always in the back of your mind think, okay, they achieved this and that, this enormous feat in a matter of 3 years, but that's them. That's not me. I'm not able to do that, right? So that's not a very reliable way of gaining motivation or courage. It is much, much more useful to look back to your own accomplishments, because that really provides you the evidence that you are capable. I mean, look at it this way. Let's just take the example of the project at work. So you launched this big project at work in 2 years. So if you were capable of doing that in the past, what would keep you from doing that in the future? Or let's take a much more general example that most of you, I think, have been through, which is studying and starting a new job. Think back to the time when you just went to university or college and started studying. How long did that take you? Let's say that took you, 3 years or 4 years to get a bachelor's degree. And after you graduated, you looked for a job, and that maybe maybe it took you a while to find a job, but in the end you found one after 1 year. So in total, that took you 5 years. So if in the past you were able to start a new career, because that's what you were actually doing, right? When you moved from high school to college and then into your first job, you were starting a new career, and you were able to do that in a matter of 5 years. If you could do that in the past, why in the world would you not be able to do that in the future? I mean, right now you are much more experienced, you are much more wise, you have more information, knowledge, and everything than back then when you were a naive 17-year-old. Sorry, I mean, that is the truth, right? I mean, at least for me, in my case, when I was 17, 18 years old, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And nowadays, I'm much more knowledgeable about myself, about what I want, and also what it takes to succeed. So if back then I was able to start a new career and get the proper education in a matter of 5 years, then nowadays, likely it would take me less than that, maybe 2 to 3 years. So those are the two things that hopefully can solve the problem of a twisted sense of time. Forward looking, thinking of your career life ahead, realistically, objectively looking at how much time you actually have to pursue your career and make those career changes. And the second solution is looking backward, looking at your proof of accomplishments or evidence of accomplishments, showing yourself, proving to yourself that in the past you were capable of pulling off great things, meaningful things in a short amount of time, and using that evidence to give yourself the courage that in the future you will be able to do the same thing. So let me know if you did those calculations and what numbers you arrived at. I would be really curious to know. Thank you so much for listening in. I really do hope that this video was useful to you. And remember that no, it's not too late to change your career. See you next time.